Hey guys, welcome to tonight's Cover One Buffalo podcast. We are going to be breaking down where the Buffalo Bills look going forward with everybody's favorite computer cowboy, Ben Baldwin. But first, our guys from Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm good, man. It's just good that football's back. The Bills are back. We're through the bye week. Things are looking good. They're getting right. Everybody's healthy. This is a fun one. This is a fun one for me, Greg. My dad's a Packers fan. There's a lot of, and my brother, obviously, people that listen know he's a Bears fan. So there's a lot of NFC North within my family. And so we don't get to play often. Only 13 times these teams have met. Weird. Not a lot in my lifetime. Yeah, it is weird that they've only met 13 times here. And so was hoping to get him up for this game in Buffalo, but that didn't work out. So we're going to have to wait another, maybe 8 years for that to happen. That'll be a tough wait. So excited for the week, though. Hope to be able to call him on Monday with just some running laps of victory.
Yeah, fun passive-aggressive jabs are always the best.
Definitely.
So this was a fun bye week. I was telling people, like, I had my daughter's last soccer tournament. I made some killer chili. I kick back and watch other teams struggle to play football. Most
that wasn't
of which
super fun, but yeah.
No. Monday night was watching the New England Patriots struggle to play football and get just dog walked by the Chicago Bears. To have them rush back their, franchise next Tom Brady in Mac Jones and play him, and then figure out that, oh crap, he's, getting booed by our fans and they're cheering for Bailey Zappi. So they bench him and bring in their next new Tom Brady, Bailey Zappi, who also gets intercepted by the Bears twice and looks terrible, and they got destroyed. I had way too much fun on Monday night, like an inappropriate amount of fun Monday night.
To be honest, like I was barely watching because it wasn't good football. I did have it
was
on,
bad. It was really bad.
And it was fun to like have those, see the moments, see the interceptions, and make fun of the New England Patriots. And I was texting Patriots fan friends of mine to kind of tease them. But no, it was really bad football. And even my brother's a Bears fan. I called him and I was like, I wouldn't start running laps about Justin Fields. Yeah, like that was pretty ugly football from all standpoints, in my opinion.
Yeah. So without further ado, we will have some fun talking about some high level discussions first. And, you guys hear us talk about him, on the post game show, and we talk about the fourth down bots and where McDermott falls in his decision making and whether we should go for it or stay. And now, every week, one of my favorite tweet threads is from our next guest, Ben Baldwin, and we're going to talk to him about it tonight. So first, without further ado, our man, Ben Baldwin. Ben, how we doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on. I live in the DC area, and I've been seeing Bills like banners and yard signs and stuff pop up, and like even here I can tell there's a lot of excitement about the team, and it's extremely well deserved. They're such a fun team to watch and follow. So happy to be here and talk about them.
Well, and you even brought it up, pre-show as we were kind of getting ready. Like, yeah, I didn't realize how much Bill stuff there is in these threads. And, Aaron says it every week. It's hard to be humble as a Bills fan right now. It's tough.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of being a Seahawks fan in the mid 2010s, where like it's kind of a weird experience because you expect your team to win every game. You're going into it like we should win this game. No one get hurt, and if we keep playing like this, we're gonna have a really good shot in January. And at the same time, that the real games that are going to matter are in January, and it's a long time to be up, but you still want to enjoy what you have right now and the games that are happening right now.
I've got to ask you, as somebody with you have such a large presence on Twitter and on football Twitter, and the data that you have and the thread that we're about to talk about this week has such an influence, and all fan bases see it. And your mentions at certain points just must be absolutely terrible. And I know I've been a culprit in the past when the Bills weren't good and showing up at the top of these. I know I've been in your mentions and saying things that probably got me maybe muted. There might be a potential for a block in there at some point. How do you, how is it like having Bills Mafia on your side versus against you? And then just how do you kind of deal with some of that noise and just being somebody that's just putting out data, not even an opinion.
Yeah, literally no opinions, like literally numbers.
Yeah, it's very different than, like, I think the first couple of years of Josh Allen's career, most people, especially in analytics Twitter, were very, very skeptical and down on him. And Bills fans did not like that. And Bills fans have, like, they've been so right and so justified that I don't think they even care anymore that everyone was wrong about Josh Allen, because like it's so obvious that he's amazing and no one's even arguing with them anymore. But yeah, when you try to be like an objective, independent person, the people who are fans of good teams are going to like you, and like the fans of the other two New York teams, if you guys even count them as New York teams, not so much. So yeah, there's definitely a discrepancy based on whether these kind of other metrics are higher or lower on a team relative to their record or something like that.
How dare you call them paper tigers?
Yeah.
So, let's go ahead and dive right in here. It's going to be a lot of fun. We got two different threads that we can pull up and go through, and we'll go through a fair amount of the information that's on there. So everybody listening, I apologize. The first couple of minutes here is going to have a fair amount of visuals. We're going to do our best to be able to do it, but everybody watching on
to
YouTube,
read them out, we'll try to
we're going to share what it is that the information is, and we'll let Ben kind of describe what it should tell us, and maybe the ones that are more predictive than others. We'll have a little bit of fun on where we see it pointing for the Bills, but obviously the Buffalo Bills are going to be at the forefront of many of these, so we're excited to.
And if there's any other interesting league-wide tidbits that you have in these, Ben, that you want to point out, please feel free to jump in with anything that else stands out to you in some of this data.
Sure.
So this first one here is the lead graphic here. So the one we're showing right now from Ben's latest thread, and we'll have that linked in the show description, is just showing the overall tiers, and it's just an offense by defense. With the Y and X axis here showing EPA per play, and really right now the Bills kind of in a tier of their own. Yeah, and this is pretty similar to what you would see with something like DVOA, and the reasoning behind doing EPA per play is that this is something that's entirely open source. Anybody could recreate this if they wanted to, and not that DVOA isn't great. I know you've talked to Aaron in the past, and he's great, but this is just kind of like the most transparent, free use way that we can come up to display how good a team's offense and defense has been doing. And as we see on this chart, the Bills are the best team in the league. They have a top 2 offense and top 3 at least defense, and they're a very, very good football team. A couple of other things. So one, this isn't adjusted for opponent, which is a weakness relative to something like DVOA. So to the extent that the Bills have played some good teams, which they have, we might want to mentally adjust them up a little bit. And there's also no garbage time adjustment, and the Bills, like, just because of killing teams, if we downweighted garbage time a little bit, they would probably come out looking a little bit better in this too. Right. That was one of my questions. It was going to be that there's some, if the Bills were in more shootouts or needed to keep their foot on the gas, that some of those games where it's 38-3 a drive into the second half, and all of a sudden they're taking their foot off the gas. We realized that they just gave up like 25 minutes of gameplay that they could have kept pouring it on.
And Josh Allen has played like a legitimate 6 fewer quarters than a majority of the quarterbacks on these other teams.
So that's definitely a note for the offensive side, especially. And people have found that it's not more predictive to throw out garbage time completely, but it should be downweighted to some extent, especially if your starting quarterback's not playing.
Right. So anything else from this one? I guess maybe anything. The Packers being like bottom quadrant is a little surprising for the early expectations.
Yeah. So the Packers, the Bills' next opponent, is another one here. So a couple of weeks ago, I was like kind of tweeting this out jokingly that like, oh, look how close the Packers and the Bears are, but Packers fans are so.
I'm sure Packers fans enjoy
So-
Loved that. Loved it.
At first, they like really objected, but after these past couple of weeks, they're just so despondent about how their
Sure.
team looks. They're like, yeah, okay, yeah, we really are that bad after losing to Washington.
Oh God. So we'll move on to the next one, which
Yeah,
is
this is a
interesting one here.
Yeah, this one is an interesting one to me because it's got so much going on here. So for the people that can't see it, can you sort of try to explain what this chart that we're looking at? So it's movement in the NFL team tiers.
Yeah, so this is trying to show snapshots at the end of each week as of the most recent 4 weeks, I think. So where was the team 4 weeks ago? If we only measure the first 4 weeks of the season, 5 weeks of the season, I can't do math right now. And then what does it look like the week after that, and then where does it sit right now? And this is interesting, I think, because it kind of captures how teams have played recently, where the teams that have really jumped a lot, for example, the 49ers, they just got clobbered by the Chiefs last weekend. So you can see that their defense has come much closer to the mean. And one of the things that jumps out year after year after year of doing this is that defense is really unstable. So it tends to be the case that, especially for the really good defenses, they have a hard time staying up on the top and they kind of creep back towards the middle. This hasn't happened with the Bills yet.
I was going to say they look pretty substantial up in that top corner.
And even if it does happen, their offense is so good that I wouldn't be too concerned. And like, it's probably going to be the Bills and the Chiefs with their two great offenses. And the Bills, even if they come back to the middle some, they'll still probably have a better defense than the Chiefs. So one would expect them to still be the better team. And
at least for regular season, I think they've pretty much run the gauntlet until, Cincinnati could put up numbers, but like that's about it in terms of the tough offenses remaining.
Yep.
And then the next one here we come to, this is third, fourth down EPA, early down EPA. Is that right? Is that where we're at now? Early down versus late down, drop back efficient. And again, dude, this is the great thing about, for me as a Bills fan who sat through the drought and always wanted modern NFL offenses. And I'll tell you, like, Bills Twitter just tweeted out, like, please let us be up there with modern NFL offenses. Now, not only are you like up there with modern NFL offense, but look, for people that are watching, look at the gap between Kansas City, Buffalo, and everyone else in the NFL. And this is like all of these types of charts, right, Ben?
Yeah, their offense just stands out in their meaning. Both Kansas City and Buffalo just stands out in so many different ways. So this is early down passing offense on the x-axis. We have the Bills and Chiefs both being top three with the Bills as the best one. And then on third downs and fourth downs, again, the Bills and Chiefs are just killing everyone. And for Bills fans, this is good because third and fourth downs can be kind of noisy and subject to variance. So if you were like the Bengals or the Raiders on here, you might be a little concerned because your offense is struggling on early downs and only being sustained by these big plays on third down and fourth down. But with the Bills, they're awesome everywhere. So
yes,
pass that's early, what you want to see.
Pass often, pass always.
Yeah,
that's our motto.
Right. And now. I mean, Arthur Smith proving that you don't need good offense to prove that play action works. If you just run the ball so much that when you pull early down play action, hey, look, it looks really good even with a terrible passing offense.
The Falcons and Titans are both stand out there.
So the next one is one of my favorites, and I think you had commented that you actually thought the Chiefs might even catch them.
I love your label on this too. For people that are listening, Ben has labeled this graph. The Bills are good. Offensive series results.
Yeah. So last year the Chiefs led this. So the whole season it was the Chiefs. The Chiefs are good, and then after. Let's see. I think it's either week 1 or week 2 that the Bills were number 1. So I was like, okay, I'll just change the title to the Bills, and then it's been the Bills are good ever since.
All right, I like it.
Nice. Well, and it's interesting. We joke. I mean, they went however long before they even punted for the first time, and they might have been in their 4th game when the 7th punt happened.
We always talk about poor Sam Martin came here
just
to
kind of hanging out, just having a good time.
Yeah, they've still had more series end in turnovers than punts, which is pretty crazy.
And they still haven't qualified for punt stats for the year.
Yeah, Sam Martin still isn't even
he was not qualified for the minimum. Yeah.
Well, and it's so I'll ask you. I don't know if this is something you know off the top of your head, but I would assume that turnover number is a little noisy and
Oh yeah.
something that
Yep.
not that we could guarantee it's going to regress back in our favor, but it's certainly likely that we should see that come back, and that this chart in front of us tells us, hey, anything that regresses away from turnover, the likelihood is this is telling us that 80% to 12%, that's a first down or touchdown. So
well, especially
anytime
when
you're
we
not
get to
turning
some
over,
other,
it's likely
there's some other
good.
charts here that would probably say that the Bills are likely to continue these drives, right?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of the turnovers, like that Rams game, they had like 9 drives and 4 of them ended on weird turnovers or something like that. And you would not expect the turnover part of that to continue at that rate.
Right.
Yeah, and some of them are those weird, that weird little flip to Isaiah McKenzie. That's not like
This
terrible decision making.
yes, and
it's
nods
just
to
wonky,
Josh. Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, no, I think turnovers, we've talked about this for years on this show too, of like how sustainable are they, and generating them or giving them up, like how sustainable is that and how much luck is baked into some of that. So I do think you should see regression back. And again, I want to kind of touch back into this later when we talk about their ability to keep the ball going. But on the next one, what is the next one here, Greg?
It's the same idea, but what is your defense giving up here? And this one,
right?
yeah,
Defense results.
Maybe
Yeah,
one of the
those are
few ones
middle
the
of the
Bills aren't at
pack
the top of. Yeah.
Well, so this one, Ben, I wanted to ask you about this one. Is this so like a Bills scheme? One thing I've talked about for years is don't care about yards, right? I don't care if teams are getting into the red zone. It's what they do when they get there. And I think this team, like Patriots teams of the past, have done a good job of, they give up first downs. They do give up long drives, but they're going to test the team to go on long sustained drives and put up touchdowns. And a lot of times they suffocate teams in the red zone or don't allow teams to score points. Is this stat indicative of defensive success, or is it more about like, can a middling team like the Bills be more about scheme and end up there in the middle?
Yeah, so usually when there's a discrepancy between this and the EPA per play results we saw before, it's usually driven by either red zone performance or creating takeaways or both. And looking at this, I think the Bills are the top team in terms of creating takeaways, so that that isn't capturing how often they're allowing first downs, but those are huge swings in terms of EPA per play. So that's why their EPA per play can be higher relative to this. And the flip side of the offensive takeaway discussion or turnover discussion we just had is that we might not expect those takeaways to continue,
right?
Unless we wanted to tell ourselves a story about the Bills' offense is so good that they're always going to be ahead and other teams are going to be playing from behind. And maybe
I'm going to tell myself Trey White's going to come back and get double-digit interceptions here and get back in the All-Pro discussion. But no, I'm not going to really tell myself that. So then this next one in the
real quick,
unless you got
before that drive in the KC game is a perfect example. KC had, I think, 4 first downs on that drive, but Kaiir Elam ends it in the end zone with an interception. If you're going to bank on, don't worry, every drive Patrick Mahomes is going to throw an end zone interception, that's probably not good process, but ultimately it's still, that turned out well. And that I think the Bills are going to bank on, hey, most teams aren't going to have a Patrick Mahomes, so our bend but don't break. We will bank on them making a mistake at some point.
Yes, most teams aren't going to be able to put up 9 plays and move down the field on us, right? I think that's what they bank on. But so top offenses by series conversion rate here, basically showing
the results of the last one, but historically now.
Yep.
Yeah, and Bills here show up a couple times recently. 2020 they show up here, 2021 and 2022. And you mentioned how obviously the Chiefs have more here in the top 10, and you list them as a juggernaut on this. If the Bills keep up at this pace, are we talking about just 2 absolute historical juggernauts happen to be at the same time, same place?
Yeah, I think that's right. You have Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, and if their offenses are always at the top of the league every time they're healthy, then I think we put them up there.
Yeah.
Well, and so for everybody listening here, this is just taking, that previous one. How often are you consistently getting first downs or touchdowns? And that you look, the fact that, the Bills the last 3 years at 79.3, 78.3, and this year 80.1, those are historically great offenses and racking up where they stand. And now a top 5 offense all time in that kind of pace really helps give some perspective on that. Hey, this isn't just like good for the Bills or like, hey, better than we're used to. This is historically good what we're seeing.
And this is to that point to tweets ago in this thread that you were saying that if those turnovers start to regress back towards in favor of Buffalo, this conversion rate is showing that they're probably going to continue to sustain those drives. If they're not turning the ball over, punt doesn't become the likely scenario.
Yeah, every 5 first and 10s they have, 4 of those times they get a new set of first and 10s, which is pretty crazy. Like
that is pretty
consistent,
especially when you sat through the drought era Buffalo Bills, because it was not like that, as you know. So this next one is QB grades, EPA over CPOE. Obviously, again, for people that aren't watching this, I encourage you to go look at this thread. The gaps between, well, it's really actually a gap between Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and Geno Smith, who is just breaking Geno Smith breaking preseason power rankings and everything like that. But it's those two, and then also Geno Smith kind of hanging out. But then everybody else in the NFL, again, by a large margin, they're just breaking NFL football right now. Ben, what is going on?
Yeah, their efficiency is just so much better than everybody else, which is basically what we've covered so far. And then the PFF grades definitely align with that. There are actually a lot of Chiefs fans that were complaining about Josh Allen being graded higher than Patrick Mahomes, and they've both been so good that I don't think it's crazy to have one over another. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, I think the Bills too have had a little bit more team success on this one specifically, because quarterbacks is such a QB driven league. I want to look at some of the guys that are within our division here. Does anything stand out to you within the AFC East of these other QBs that are, kind of trying to come up and bring their teams to compete with the Bills?
So I think the first is there's a team in your division with 5 wins that might have 2 of the 3 worst quarterbacks that played this year, which is Zach Wilson and Joe Flacco. So
that's a Breece Hall tweet right there.
Yeah. So the Jets keep winning games. We'll see if they keep it up there. Last time I checked, they were home underdogs to the Patriots, who just looked absolutely terrible on Monday. So betting markets do not believe in them. And
the Breece Hall injury, I think, put a damper on how people probably feel about them. But
and then transitioning to the Patriots, I would not feel super threatened about them if I were a Bills fan. And then Tua is the one that has really taken a step forward with the new head coach and Tyreek Hill. And it'll be interesting to see what the Dolphins do if he can stay healthy the rest of the year.
Yeah, we've tried to be even-handed. Aaron's always really good about saying that we don't think Tua is quite as good as the national media tries to make him, but he's also better than Bills fans want to admit. Like, he's actually a little better than I'm happy to acknowledge. He's done well. When you surround someone with explosive weapons like that, and he's good enough to get him the ball, they can do some things. Like, it's just reality. So this next one is one that I hate because I wish we were at the top.
We had this talk all year last year.
God, my least favorite thing on earth is handing the ball off on 2nd and long. It makes me my second least favorite is when they don't do play action on 1st down. But my least favorite thing is like, oh my God, what it's your best case, a good run is 5 yards. So, good, you get 3rd and 5. Like, come on, you're not giving yourselves a chance. So the Bills are okay here, but are actually kind of middle of the pack in 2nd and long pass rate.
Yeah, I think in prior years they've been higher on this, and it's possible that the rest of the league has just gotten more pass happy in this situation, so they look relatively less good.
I was just going to say, if you look at the scale here, they're actually at like 76, 77%, and that happens to be middle of the pack now.
Yeah, so they're still calling pass plays 3/4 of the time, which isn't terrible, but on the other hand, you have Josh Allen. Your run game is not the best, so I would probably call pass plays the vast majority of the time in these situations.
This situation to me, because this came up a lot of times for Daboll, and I don't think that the data necessarily backed up how Bills fans felt on game day threads, but the problem for me came up with the 2nd and long conversations was when I would go back and check all 22, you'd see a lot of it was them checking into runs, right? And
5-man blocks.
When if it's like a 2nd and long situation, defense is going to give you looks that as a QB, you are just ingrained to say, when you get this look, check it. Like, this is a run friendly situation. We want to establish that physicality. So I'm torn between the data of saying, like, this is not the right situation, like, do not run in this situation, versus what I'm pretty positive from what I know of football. These guys are coached to do when given the looks in the situation. And so maybe can you talk about some of that, like how's data influencing football and how is that maybe changing in the league? Because it does look like it appears to be changing.
Yeah, I think it's like it's not super hard to look at, like, for example, the difference in EPA per play on second and long if you call a run play or pass play. And NFL teams have access to what was the defensive front, how many men are in the box, all this other stuff. And I'm like, I don't have access to that information, obviously, but I'm pretty sure that accounting for all of that would still, especially if you have an elite quarterback, would still point to passing the ball more. And if you look at the Chiefs on here, they're at 85% relative to 75%. So they've, like, I'm sure defenses are playing them in a similar way to how they play the Bills, and they've still really leaned into passing the ball on second down.
Right. Well, and I mean, the important part why would be this chart where it shows you that the Bills are, the most effective passing team and potentially the second worst or least efficient rushing team. So yeah, it's probably a smart thing that you throw the ball.
Yeah, I think there's a later tweet in this looking at the Bills run blocking, and it is not good. So that explains how bad they've been at rushing the ball this year.
Yeah, it's not great. But again, to me, this is a tweet that shows pass early, pass often, and pass always. If you're built, like, don't take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands right now.
We're good. Yeah, I joke all the time, like 85-15. I'm good with 85-15.
In neutral 50% of the right. And this is why this tweet here, yards over expected per carry versus run blocking. Let's talk about this chart here first, and then this is where I kind of I told you offline I want to push back on PFF. So let's talk about this first, and let's push back on PFF a little bit.
Sure. So let's see. 1, 2, 3. So the Bills have the fourth worst run blocking grade per PFF. So only the Chargers, Cardinals, and Colts are worse.
Amazingly, the Colts.
Yeah, the Colts offensive line is really falling apart. And so that is kind of thing one we can see from here. And thing two is using the next gen stats. If we account for the position of every defender at the moment of handoff, we see that Singletary, which is the one running back who has enough snaps to qualify for this, has gotten about half a yard less than expected per attempt. So according to the information we have here, it's bad run blocking and also a bad running back given his opportunities.
Well, and it's something that we've talked about where I think that there's a level of adequacy that Devin Singletary has that we appreciate. He is a little bit of wiggle, but it's just we've had so little else, other than going all the way back to, like, unless you get some LaShawn McCoy, we just haven't had a great alternative there. So it's a constant discussion of, like, oh, what would it look like if we upgrade? What would it do? And we try to temper that with, I'm trying to look at across here, some other legitimately talented, Derrick Henry's down below here. Leonard Fournette's down below here. There's a lot of guys that it shows you, hey, if you don't have the blocking, it doesn't matter. There are some guys who do both.
I compare all the time, Singletary and Montgomery. I think if you had the blocking, I think you see the difference. In my opinion, I think they're very similar running backs. There's some differences, but I think that you would get similar production out of Singletary if you saw the run blocking matching what Montgomery was getting.
Yeah. So I'm going to skip the next one because it's a fun one to end on. And I'm going to go down to the one that Aaron pointed out here where we're somehow dead center.
Dead center. I've never seen, I look at your graph all the time. Maybe I'm just not paying attention because this one happens to be Buffalo. I've never seen anybody this close to dead center in any chart ever. And that's actually pretty indicative of how I've always felt about Brandon Beane offensive lines that he's built here in his time in Buffalo. It's either below or up to average.
Yeah, I think average is totally fine. If you have a elite quarterback and an average offensive line, then you're probably going to have a good offense. And as long as it's not terrible, then it's probably not going to be bad enough to torpedo you. This year's been interesting because here we have two measures of pass protection, one from PFF, which is from watching and grading plays, and the other one is from ESPN, which is based on their player tracking data. And there's some teams that are just like all over the place on here. So according to
the Bears are weird.
ESPN, the Bears have the third best pass protection in the league. According to PFF, they're like 8th worst or something like that. And usually there's not these huge discrepancies, but it's been kind of interesting to watch this year.
Yeah, well, and this one's a good. I mean, same idea. This is just breaking out the individual quadrants
Right.
of specific ones. So this is again going through for kind of that trench warfare and showing the first two are pass block and run block, and then the next two are pass rush and run defense. And not surprisingly, Bills are middle of the road in pass protection. We just saw, and now you see them bottom quadrant in run blocking.
Yeah, and at least there's agreement there. So both ESPN and PFF are very, very low on how the Bills have been doing run blocking.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I got one for you because I love your data. I see a chart like this. These two individual pieces of data, I think, what are we looking at? Yeah, we're looking at win rate and grades at PFF. On their own, standing alone, I don't love these pieces of data. I'm not a big fan of win rate. I think that it misses a lot of context. And I have huge problems. We talked a little bit offline about the problems that I have with PFF. I have a huge problem in how they grade DBs. Offensive line is probably second most. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so I have a hard time. I think putting them together makes a little more context and compares them against each other. So I think there's more validity in having the two of them together. Can you sell me on this as something I should pay more attention to?
Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on the facet that is being graded. So yeah, for defensive backs, all the actions happening off the screen, they're not getting graded if they're not targeted. So yeah, coverage grades should be taken with a big grain of salt. PFF knows this. They started collecting data on coverage players who aren't targeted a couple years ago. So yeah, I totally support that argument. For other positions, so whenever people have looked at like pass protection, people have found that pass protection grades at the individual level are pretty stable over time. And I think that makes sense because it's not that hard to look at a player on a given play in pass protection and know if he won his job or not, because like a lot of it is trying to block the person in front of you. For run defense and run blocking, I think it's a little harder because it depends on like assignments and like who is supposed to double and climb to the next level and all this stuff that I don't understand very well. But yeah, so I think pass protection and pass rush, I would trust PFF grades to a decent extent. Same with quarterbacks and the rest to some extent. And then anyone who has a big job in coverage, then that's where I'm not totally sure. So there's a reason I do not post coverage grades in these threads.
Okay. Well, and I mean, you look at, another one discrepancy now, almost not much far different than the Bears. The Bills on the pass rush, you're talking about top two right there with the Cowboys in grade, but all of a sudden ESPN has them below average in win rate.
Well, and so
it's interesting.
Win rate is based on time.
2.5 seconds, I think.
Right, 2.5 seconds.
If you beat your guy in 2.5 seconds.
Yep.
Ben, that to me that feels like it misses a lot of context.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Like the full way to do that would be like look at the percent of time a team has a win within like each amount of time and say like relative to league average, how much more likely are you to generate a win? You
need it to the average plus like individual QB's time to throw is very different.
Yes.
And I would think you would have to adjust for their there's just a lot of context missing to those, but I like that you put them together because I do think it adds context to two that probably need a little bit more.
It also doesn't account for like how many pass rushers you send, whether there's play action, like all kinds of stuff that really affect how easy it is to pass protect that it isn't captured in
maybe we're building something new here, Ben. Maybe we're doing some new stats here.
So PFF actually has something like this, but you can't actually get the data unless one of them tweet it out. So hopefully at some point they'll make it.
Well, they're not giving it to me, Ben.
Aaron is not on the Christmas card list. We got two more here. This one is a Sean McDermott tweet and one that we've talked about that people question all the time. And that what I love here is that this is not how often does a team go for it. This is specifically which teams go for it when they should. And I think, you are very comically point out, be like, hey, look, we don't always say go for it. There are times when it makes sense to kick the field goal. There was one on Monday night.
Or a lot of 50-50s. Right?
Yes. And the ones where, hey, do you lean into it when it makes sense? So help explain what this is and why the Bills being number one here is a positive in their decision making and their, I think, embracing of analytics in the department they built.
Yeah. So there there are a couple things that I think we should do, and we talk about how often teams go for fourth down. One is we shouldn't just count how often a team has gone for fourth down, because some teams will have more 4th and 1s or 4th and 2s by chance or whatever. And the mouse is hovering over the Chargers here. So the Chargers have had 22 opportunities to go for fourth down when the bot thinks it should. And that's because their offense is basically designed to create 3rd and shorts and 4th and shorts. So they just always end up in these situations. So yeah, of course the Chargers have gone for it more times than any other team because they're always in these situations and they go for it some of the time. But if you look at the percent of the time that they go for it, it tells a very different story. And I would guess that the Chargers have gone for it more often than the Bills. But if you look at accounting for how many opportunities they've had, the Bills have actually made the right decision at a very high rate. The other thing this chart does is when teams are trailing big, they almost always start going for it a lot more. So to try to level the playing field, this throws out if you have win probability of less than 10% after the first quarter, because every team starts going for it. So it doesn't really tell you about how they behave when the game is still in hand. So once you make all those adjustments, there's basically 3 teams that stand out at the top: the Bills, Cardinals, which is kind of surprising to me, and then the Jaguars, which is not surprising because Doug Peterson went for it a lot with the Eagles, and including famously in the Super Bowl with the Philly special and everything.
So one last
feeling
one
for the Jaguars right now, before we finish off for the Bills, because all the data I'm seeing has them looking better than the record right now.
They're the weirdest, and they're like an analytics darling. They're doing the right things. They just can't execute. They can't.
I was in DVOA earlier. They're saying the same thing. DVOA looks great, and it's just it's not resulting in wins. It's got to be driving everyone nuts.
I'm trying to talk myself into this being good for them, and that like they're a good team. They're better than last year, and this is going to get them a draft pick, and then next year will be their year to take a step forward. But
I will say, I don't know. I'm a big fan of toxic differential, and I haven't been able to chart it this year because Sharp stopped posting his explosive plays. I don't have time to do it anywhere else. But Philly last year showed up in the top 5 all year, and then towards the end of the year, it's like, holy cow, Philly's in the playoffs, and all of a sudden now this year they're one of the best teams in football. Sometimes these trends that don't show up in wins do show up a year later. So maybe keep an eye on Jacksonville.
So everyone's favorite here, kind of pulling together. Help us talk about this betting market conference. And I will say there's actually a whole nother thread that we didn't get a chance to get to here that actually talks about the market derived team tier. So we don't want to monopolize all of Ben's time. We have another thread that I'll put in the
We told them we were
here,
keeping him for 10 minutes.
We're already over our time. But help out what this means and what this is implying where people are putting their wallets behind it.
Yeah. So this takes betting market odds, does an adjustment to take out like the extra that Vegas takes to make sure that every team's Super Bowl odds add up to 100%, every team's conference championship odds and each conference adds up to 100%. So this is like out of the 100% pie that is available to teams to win the Super Bowl, the Bills have a quarter of that, 25%, which I haven't done this historically other than last year, but my guess would be that this is a very high percent for after 6 games or whatever the Bills have played. And that just reflects that they have a very good record, they're a very good team, and they have a head-to-head win over their next team in the competition. So they have a very good shot at getting the number 1 seed. And if they play the Chiefs again, playing them in their field, and they're a very good team. The other interesting thing is, so they have a 30% chance of winning the AFC and a 25% chance of winning the Super Bowl. Those numbers are not like the Super Bowl odds are not half of the conference odds. And that's because if the Bills did get to the Super Bowl, they would be pretty heavy favorites in the Super Bowl. So that's why their Super Bowl odds are more than half of what their conference championship odds are.
Whereas you see the Eagles are the opposite. Their Super Bowl odds are less than half of their conference.
So we're essentially saying that Bills KC AFC championship game is the Super Bowl.
Yes. Yeah. Those are the 2 best teams. So if one of those teams gets to the Super Bowl, you would expect them to be favored over the Eagles or whoever makes it out of the NFC. The NFC is really disappointed this year.
Yeah. One last one here. I know this, just a quick one so people understand. Sometimes it's hard to understand what these numbers derive, but I think there's an easy way to show it with this week why Aaron Rodgers is going to be a double-digit underdog for the first time in his career. This kind of helps drive where those likelihoods are, and you can almost work backwards of what the spreads are going to be just by looking at this.
That's right. So this shows how many points a team would be favored against an average team on a neutral field. So we have the Bills at 10.4 in a tier by themselves. And I don't manually make these tiers. It's basically an algorithm that splits teams into 6 tiers where it tries to make teams within a tier as close together as possible. I've never had it only have one team in a tier before, and then that's how far ahead the Bills are from everybody else. If we look at the number for the Bills, we see plus 10.4. If we look at the Packers, they're plus 1.4. So on a neutral field, we would expect the Bills to be 9-point favorites. There's about a 1.5 for home field. So that's how we get to our 10.5 favorites of the Bills over the Packers. If we wanted to know what the biggest possible point spread this year would be, let's see. If we had Texans at Bills, it would be something like 18 points. So that's a pretty big point spread.
Well, and we are going to see a little bit of this because we will see the Bills play. They'll be at the Lions, so that one will get walked back a little bit. But that one's in the range
Christmas
where you
Eve.
could be at 2 touchdowns, and you have the Bears being hosted. That's the one I think could set the number for the biggest spread this year. So we'll see where that goes by that time. That it might even push beyond what the 16, 17, 18 might be here. We'll see what kind of appetite Vegas has to be able to put a sexy number out there. Yeah. But ultimately, we appreciate your time very much, Ben. We will talk. We use you every week. We appreciate your work.
I will say, and also a little bit, you sound like a Bills homer.
They're legitimately fun to watch. Like when Josh Allen's throwing bombs or running over people, like I don't have any real attachment to any AFC teams. So if the Bills run through the AFC, then hey, that sounds fun to me.
Right. It's fun football. Sure.
That's what anytime anybody asks me, said my number one sales pitch is Josh Allen is the easiest player to root for in football. Like he's just so fun to root for. It's a fun brand of football. He plays with his heart on his sleeve. It's easy to be a Josh Allen fan.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Share anything else you have coming up, any fun projects you have going on, or where else people can find your work.
I'm on Twitter at Ben Baldwin. I tweet stuff, and I'm glad that you guys have found it useful. And good luck to the Bills the rest of the season.
We appreciate you very much. Appreciate your generosity with your time tonight. This is a great time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
All right. So obviously, we talk about Ben's work on the show. It's awesome to be able to have him on here and be able to talk through everything and have some fun with it. But it's a lot more fun when all of his threads just show how awesome the Bills are.
Yeah, no, I wasn't lying when I said that for these analytics guys, it's got to be such a weird thing to not like. I'm immersed in Bill's Twitter all the time, right? And so like that's the only vibe that I know that's happening on Twitter. And so for them, for years, it probably was not a friendly fan base and a friendly environment to hear from Bill's Twitter every time we were middling or not where the analytics were where they wanted them to be, where we wanted it to be. And those poor guys were just putting out the data and not really even sharing opinions. And we for sure buried them. So it's a tough time. And then now, though, I'm screenshotting and sharing their stuff everywhere. So for a fan base to turn and then go from absolutely hating you to just retweeting you and praising you it must be a wild ride to participate from the outside looking in.
Yeah, it's super, super interesting. Yeah. Before we dive in, you want to talk about some of the things that we do to be able to have fun and do this research. Some of them are nice free resources like Ben's that he works very hard to keep things out there and shares the code for them. But many things we have to dive in and pay for. And you guys help support that. The platforms we use to share the devices and things that we use to create the shows and everything that also goes into it. You also get an awesome t-shirt, an awesome decal, a welcome letter signed by Aaron, Eric, and I, and exclusive access to a lot of other fun things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You get exclusive members only content, in-depth analysis, including scheme, play-by-play, or play and player breakdowns, scouting reports, analytics and analysis. You get access to our Slack community, which has the Cover One contributors are in there, a bunch of great fans. We actually just added a few contributors to our team that were members of the Slack channel. So some of the faces that you now know as Cover One contributors came up through the ranks of being members of the Slack channel. One here with us tonight, folks, ladies and gentlemen, Greg Tompsett. So you're going to want to get in that Slack channel. It is a great community, thriving on game days. Whether the Bills are playing or not, an absolutely fantastic place to be. And like Greg said, this sexy shirt, if you're watching, you can only have this inaugural one pass shirt if you sign up today. Well, not if you sign up today, but if you sign up this year, $57 because the Bills are going
Today
to
would
be
be great,
playing.
though.
Today would be fantastic. But the Bills are going to be playing Super Bowl 57. That's why $57. Get on it now. The content's absolutely fantastic. The community is absolutely fantastic. And it helps us. People ask all the time, like Greg said, how can you help? This is how.
Yeah. So, check it out. We appreciate it very, very much. And now we're gonna pivot over a little bit. We normally have a guest on to break down the Packers, but we couldn't pass
Ain't no
up the
way, ain't no
opportunity.
Packers people want to talk to us.
Yeah, well,
No, I'm just
that is
kidding.
actually true. No, we actually had a couple guests lined up that ended up backing out, and Ben had been working with me to come on, so we ended up working it out tonight to be able to have Ben on. But you and I still did our normal prep and research, and we do want to talk about this a little bit. And I think that the best place to start is, we had this circled as one of the marquee matchups. The NFL did too. It's our only Sunday night football matchup of the year. This is like the marquee matchup of the week. And all of a sudden, every week you do our DVOA graphic for us. And I mean, yeah, Aaron, this is one of the most lopsided ones we've had all year.
Yeah, this matchup's tough, Greg, because I watched 3 Packer games, and I gotta say they're the record. They're probably not who the record says they are. I think a lot of it, they probably could have won a couple of the games.
Some
that I
real
watched.
unlucky drops, some untimely moves.
Yeah, I talk about it all the time in the post game. 4 or 5 plays go another way. It's your game. They're kind of in that space right now where those plays make probably a bigger difference than it does for the Bills right now. I think the Bills, like we just saw from Ben, are at a top tier of the NFL where Josh Allen can erase some of those mistakes, where right now the Packers can't afford to erase some of the mistakes that are happening to them right now. And you're seeing it show up in DVOA. So for people that are listening on podcast, Greg's got the tweet pulled up, a matchup comparison to DVOA. This is just the basics here. And so right now it's a clean sweep for the Bills. Buffalo is first overall in DVOA. The Green Bay Packers are 20th overall. Bills are second overall in offensive DVOA. The Packers are 10th overall. Buffalo is first overall in defensive DVOA. Packers.
This is the one that shocks me. That is the most shocking. But every number on here, I thought that the Packers were going to be neck and neck with the Bills for one of the top 2 defenses in the league.
Yeah,
25th.
It's so we'll get into it here in a second. Let me finish here. 17 for special teams, the Bills are 7th and the Green Bay Packers are 29. So when we dive in a little bit deeper to the layers of DVOA, and again, for those listening or watching that don't understand, it's defense over adjusted, defense value over adjusted. So this is comparing against their peers, against league average, where they stand.
And I know Ben brought it up in his discussion when people ask, oh yeah, but they played a tough schedule or an easy schedule.
Correct.
They literally take that into account. Okay, the Bills played the Ravens. How did the Bills offense do against the Ravens compared to everybody else? How they do against the Ravens?
Right.
How
versus league average, how are teams playing?
Yeah. Right. Like the Bills, dog walk the Titans and the Steelers. It's not simply that they look great. It's, how has everyone else done against the Titans or the Steelers? And then how did the Bills defense do against them? That is where the stretch comes. Oh, they did this much more than average. That's how you get to be first in DVOA.
Yeah, one of the most frustrating things to me in the NFL, especially getting prepped for shows during the week, is DVOA does cost a lot of money to get access to Football Outsiders, which is, again, why you need to sign up for One Pass, because those memberships are not cheap for us. I wish it wasn't so much money so that this was a statistic that was more accessible to everybody, because I see smart people and people that I like and follow using like NFL.com total yardage statistics to preview a team and stuff like that. And I can't get down with that because I do know that I have access to DVOA. So that's why you'll hear it on Disguised Coverage. You'll hear it on Film Review. You hear it here. You hear it on Air Raid, all the shows on our network, because we believe in the context built into these stats. But again, not to get too deep into that, we have an episode all about DVOA. You can go listen to that. To answer your question, though, Greg, as to why their defense is overall 25th, they actually are top 10 pass defense. They're 10th overall in pass, so they're right there on the border of pass defense, but they're 31st in, against the run. I think teams have beat them up. Now, this doesn't matter so much on the other side of the ball. The Bills are second, or they're first overall in the pass, and they're 28th in the run, but they're still second overall in offense, because it's a passing league and it matters more. You don't see that same weight. Yeah, on the offensive side of the ball. According to DVOA, it doesn't have that same impact on the defensive side of the ball, because the team is still able to assert themselves against you, and they're still able to score against you and score more points than your team is. So right now, that run defense is really dragging the overall defensive rating down for the Packers. We could talk about it when we talk about the sides of the ball, but I do think I was also shocked when I saw that they were 25th overall, but it really is the defense weighing that down because the pass defense is still there. It's a top 10 pass defense in the NFL. But to go through real quick what we got DVOA up, what I got up. So for overall, Bills offense is second overall. Their offensive pass is first. Offensive run is 28th, which maybe this is the weekend to get that right. We just talked about a bad DVOA defense. We'll see. Offense for the Packers is their 10th overall. They're 14th with pass and 15th in run. So really average pass and run right now. Just kind of middling team. Defense, they're 25th, like I said, 10th in pass, 31st in run. The Bills are fourth against the pass, first against the run. Again, just kind of stout everywhere in DVOA. And really, I think the Packers one looks bad right now, but I think those graphics are going to start looking worse and worse every week here coming up, Greg.
Yeah, this schedule and everything that's coming up, I'd love to say that we're going to have we're going to have a squeaker here or there. We're going to have a game that's closer than it should be.
Might be this one,
Hopefully, we find a way to pull that out and get some ugly wins. I'm good with ugly wins. They
Sure.
count all the same. But there's going to be an awful lot of games where the expectation is going to be a pretty strong blowout. And that, having a preseason Super Bowl favorite who's admittedly struggling with the back-to-back MVP as their quarterback, and that in most books it's actually gone from the 10.5 that Ben referenced up to like 11.5, and it's it's really hard to have a better example than back-to-back weeks of favored in Arrowhead against Mahomes and now favored by 11.5 against Aaron Rodgers. This is a special team. It's special.
Yeah, for this particular matchup, the Aaron Rodgers thing being favored against him is tough because the Packers right now are just not playing well, right? They are coming in limping. And so I think getting the 10.5 against them is just more a sign of maybe where the Packers are at right now. But this is a special team. This spread probably shouldn't be as high as it is. Like you said, when we looked at this game going into the schedule, we thought this was probably going to be one of those closer ones. This was going to be the end of that tough stretch of the schedule for you. Now it looks like maybe you're already past that. Potentially, maybe we're sleeping a little bit on Green Bay here. But yes, you're right. This is special. And I don't think we're going to see much less than a 10-point spread at this point. Like you and Ben were saying, I think this is now the standard going forward here for the year. And you might even see a 10-point spread in the playoffs, depending how that shapes up.
Yeah, I could see an early round matchup being, out of hand, especially you talk about some of the teams that, technically
we're on that tier. I was looking at that tier.
Right now, like the Jets are in the playoffs. Like if we played the Jets in Buffalo, we'd be a double-digit favorite
on that. I would. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. It's just hard. Again, we're sitting here. We sound like such homers, Greg. If you follow us on Twitter, if you follow us here, just because all these charts, all the things are just, hey, this team is historically fantastic, and it's hard to kind of sit in the moment and enjoy that. Jeremy White had tweeted out something that you retweeted and kind of got a conversation going about nervous mafia. Right, but all this
it's
stuff,
real. It's real.
It's a real thing. But all the stuff we've talked about so far tonight has eliminated all that for me.
Yeah. Well, and
that's
also
when you talk about a special team,
obviously I probably, almost as much as you, because having to live around it, we get annoyed with Patriots fans. So I'm actually not going to use the Patriots fans, because the Patriots fans were a super weird breed that wasn't a huge priority early on, and it was kind of a bonus when they came along. Like the Patriots were a distant fourth of all Boston sports teams, but I will use the reference of the Red Sox. And the Red Sox, for that group, when you had that stretch where like Yankees Red Sox was the big rivalry, but you constantly had that, whoa, wait, what's going to go wrong now? And it happened so much that it was ingrained, and that even after they finally overcame it and won their championship, it started to turn a little bit, but there was still that weird energy. And then eventually you get another title, and like it builds that confidence of, oh, good, now I think good things are going to happen. And ultimately, I really think Bills fans, I'd love for people to feel more confident about this team and to embrace how good they are. but I almost respect the fact that for a lot of people, it's just going to take until we win a trophy, until it actually happens to where, oh, we are that good and we are going to win the ultimate prize. And the thing that I've been waiting to happen for my entire life that always happens, it didn't happen this time. Oh, wow, it is possible. I almost think it's going to take that for some people to really embrace it and not just expect some shoe to drop.
Yeah, I don't want to take away too much from the Packer matchup here, but I actually lived that existence that you talked about. I was a huge baseball fan all my life growing up into early 2000s. And so I was a Red Sox fan. And so I lived that kind of roller coaster of being a Red Sox fan, all the Yankees, Red Sox, the Aaron Boone home run, all that stuff. But what I will say is during that run, even though the Yankees took it to him in the playoffs, when you thought you had them, it was that Kansas City Chiefs type of thing. I always enjoyed how special those teams were in the moment, because I forget which year it was, if it was the year they lost the Yankees or the year they ended up winning it all. But like there was a stretch of like 3 months where they were the best hitting team like historically ever. And like you just have to enjoy those periods of time, these statistics that Ben is sharing with us, the stuff that we bring to you every single week. And yeah, fine, be nervous about the final outcome of how it will all go. But in the moment, you really got to bathe in this, because we're talking about historical levels that you're getting to watch. The team that you fly the colors for, that Greg puts his flag up for every Sunday, that team is the best team in the world right now. That team is shattering historical records. And maybe it won't end how we want it to, but I'm not going to let that take away from enjoying it in the moment.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have one. He's not listening right now, so I'm gonna be okay rubbing it in. One of my good friends that lives here, and my across the street neighbor, my daughter's best friend. That their father is a great guy. I've built a good friendship with him. His son, who's 11, is a Josh Allen fan and likes the Bills more than the Browns. And he comes up. I let him come in my office and see all my stuff. He'll like want to come talk to me about what things are going on, and it's just wild that like we're that team now that random kids are just going to choose to be Bills fans because we're the most fun team to watch. Like that's awesome and such a foreign feeling.
Yes. All right, but now we actually sound like homers. Let's dial it back. Let's talk about this Packers matchup.
A couple things. I'll start on the defensive side. Just because it's weird in that, you look at who's getting the snaps, and it's still Rashawn Gary, and it's still Kenny Clark, and it's still Rasul Douglas, and it's still Jair Alexander, and like a lot of the talent that I expected to be the reason that this was one of the best defenses in the NFL, and it's still Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos in the defensive backfield. It's still Jair Alexander and Eric Stokes and Rasul Douglas as their three corners. Like those five are ridiculous. It's still their first round pick, Quay Walker, next to Devondre Campbell. I can't grasp, how do you have this much talent on defense and it's not coming together? I don't understand. I can't put my finger on. There's these consistent lapses in coverage where they're giving up guys downfield. There's missed tackles, way more missed tackles than we've seen with a group like this. There's still pretty good pressure, but not getting home in the way that they were consistently getting home before. And I don't quite know what to expect. I'm nervous. Rashawn Gary still scares me, but this is a matchup where I was expected to be really scared going into the defense. And I look at the results and the stats, and I'm not. But I then look at layer by layer in what they have at each level of the defense, and the names are still there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all week long I keep hearing people talk about the other side of the ball, the offense for the Green Bay Packers, and that at some point they're going to get it going, right? And you don't want to be the team that they get going against. And I actually think the opposite. I think it's the defense. Is at some point they're going to get it going, and that's going to be the driving force. If this Green Bay Packers team is going to have their patented big run that gets them into the playoffs here this year, I think it's going to be led by that defense, just creating havoc and creating turnovers. It is on paper their most talented side of the ball at all the levels. Like Aaron Rodgers, I guess you do expect him at some point to start, dragging the team to success, but I just don't see at all three levels of the team on the offensive side of the ball that they have that talent that they can just like take over games and go on runs. But on the defensive side of the ball, you're right, Greg. I think it hasn't produced the way you would expect it to, because that you brought up that defensive back group. outside of the Bills, when healthy, like that's right up there with the Bills in terms of that 5 defensive backs. I can't think of a better unit that I would want to like put together than this Green Bay Packers one. And that sort of causes me some concern. Like I'm interested to see how this top passing defense finally does go up against good edge players and defensive backs. Like there's something there that could break in a negative way for the Bills if they get it going the right way.
Yeah, I mean, so individually, Eric talks all the time. Kenny Clark is a like Daquan Jones level player. Like Daquan Jones is having a better year than
There's
Kenny
so many
Clark,
good interior
but
defensive
Kenny Clark is
linemen.
super stout. And then you're bringing in Devontae Wyatt was a first round pick.
Yeah.
Jaron Reed is a
Jaron Reed's played
guy.
a lot of good football in the NFL. Like he
Yeah.
really has, and that's a really sneaky good pickup for them.
Yeah, and then Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary are probably two of the best like power rushers in the NFL. They're not the bend that Von Miller has, but still good two legit power rushers. And Rashawn Gary's 28 pressures and 6 sacks. Like he's still having a great season.
Michigan,
I don't understand. Yeah, well, he was a slow build. He was a guy who looked like a bust. Like some people thought he was a bust at first, and now he's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL.
Crazy.
So and then Jair Alexander is a guy who is absolutely on a Trey White tier.
He's going to follow Stephon Diggs, right? Like that's going to be a follow all day.
He's one of the few shadow corners in the NFL, and this year he's not bad. He's not like all of a sudden getting trashed, or as you like to point out, like he's not getting picked on. But he's not having the year that he's had historically. And it's not up to his historic levels.
I do see, unless they're able to really do something with the safety help, I see some opportunities to pick on Stokes here. If they're going to go ahead and put
Davis,
Alexander, if they want to run Alexander with Diggs, I'll move Diggs all over the place, and I'm looking to get some one-on-one looks with Gabe Davis and Stokes, because I like Stokes as a player, but I don't think that he can have that assignment all day without getting beat a few times. And I would look to take advantage of that matchup when possible.
So what are some of the things that you found looking at the Packers offense here that, again, back-to-back defending MVP, 2 studs in the backfield? Why isn't it equating to what we expected?
Yeah, I honestly think it all starts up front for them, and the kind of constant rotation that they haven't been able to really put anything solidified on that offensive line in place because David Bakhtiari hasn't been healthy for really 2.5 seasons with any type of consistency. And, him going back off last week kind of shakes things up in the offensive line. I'm still not even sure, is he going to play here in this week? And if he is, how's that going to impact who's playing in other positions? Because they kind of move Jenkins around a little bit depending on what Bakhtiari is doing. So they haven't really been able to solidify this offensive line, which is kind of a bummer when you got a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, playing behind an offensive line that's a little bit of turmoil. And so I think that is really where the problems for this offense starts. And then it also, maybe not where it starts, because where it starts is losing Devontae Adams and not filling that hole. And right now, going into this week, Greg, we're looking at a wide receiving core of Romeo Doubs, Sammy Watkins, and Amari Rodgers. Well, it looks like, right? Like, because Lazard's for sure out, right?
Yeah, I didn't know if he was officially out, but I think
I haven't seen their official depth chart, but it sounded like they were concerned that injury may go on weeks.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. And I want to use a reference to the team we played last week where the Chiefs knew they weren't going to replace Tyreek Hill 1-for-1 because you can't. But they went out and brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster and drafted Sky Moore. And that, that bundle has replaced in aggregate, go back to like Moneyball in the Billy Bean movie, that, hey, we can't replace Jason Giambi, but in aggregate, we can replace these 3 guys with some other players, and that their offenses kept clicking. Like, it's still good. It's not as dangerous as with Tyreek Hill. What's crazy is the Packers didn't do any of those things. They didn't do any of those things. It's absurd.
It's a really tough spot because, again, so their running backs, obviously that's the highlight of what they should be leaning into in this offense. And I think that they're struggling there because of the offensive line. Like, everyone's saying, oh, they just need to establish the run game and get the run game going. And it's a little easier said than done when this offensive line isn't really able to give that to them. And this team is really sort of designed right now to stretch you horizontally. right? Like even in the run game, their success is coming stretching horizontally. And unfortunately for them, everyone's saying, hey, this offense at some point is going to get right. Unless they can find a way to expose a DeMar Hamlin or get this team sort of stretched vertically, this Bills defense, and expose some big passing plays, I think this plays right into exactly what the Bills defense wants, is a team that is going to try to dink and dunk and put together those 9, 10, 11 play drives. And they're going to make more mistakes than you are. And eventually going to have to punt, turn the ball over, things like that. I think this plays right into the Bills' hands. And I don't know that they have the tools to really step up and get the offense going against such a good Bills defense like we've seen.
Yeah, it's one of those things that Eric and Anthony and those guys had Daquan Jones on. Make sure you guys were checking that out last night. It was a fantastic interview. Having him gives me a lot of reassurance that we're not going to see some crazy, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon monster game. They're talented. I don't think we're going to shut them down completely. We're going to see some flashes here or there. But in years past, this is a matchup I would have been terrified about. That, oh my God, they're going to expose our run defense. We're not going to be able to keep up. And now with our rotation of defensive tackles and the way our linebackers are playing with those defensive tackles in front of them, I'm confident that we're going to play good run defense. And that's crazy to say out loud after what we've been watching the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, Groot should get some flowers in there too.
Yeah,
Greg Rousseau, Shaq should get some flowers in there because my concern is them stretching horizontally, and I feel like
Von Miller has been a great run defender.
Yeah, Von Miller and Greg Rousseau give me a little bit more confidence that I don't think they'll be able to just come in and stretch you horizontally. I think those 3 things playing together, the interior defensive line, the edge rushers, not just being edge rushers, but playing well and run support. And then
play the run on the way to the quarterback.
Yeah, the way Matt Milano, you spoke on it last week, how great he's playing. And I think Tremaine Edmonds is finally stepping into his own on this defense too.
And I'll let you know, Joe Marino pushed back on my Tremaine Edmonds take. So he's there with you on a little bit higher than I am.
I'm a little higher on Tremaine. Yeah. And I actually think they're both just really playing great football at the right time. And it's a kudos to the defensive line finally being in place in front of them. And that to me is really what gives me the confidence in a matchup where this team wants to stretch you that kind of horizontal game, both in the passing game and in the run game. Okay, well, the Bills probably have the 2 of the most freak physical linebackers in the game, plus a defensive line that they can play in front of. I feel pretty confident that you can't do that 9, 10 times in a row and put together sustained drives.
So Carl here asking, what's the word on Trey? So today,
definitely
Sean McDermott, today in Sean McDermott's press conference, he confirmed that Tre'Davious White will not play against the Packers. He also confirmed that the deadline to activate and add Trey White to the 53-man roster is next week. It's on Wednesday. So on Monday or Tuesday, we will see.
I'm going to say they're going to take it.
Roster.
They're going to take it as far as they have to.
Yeah. So now that also doesn't mean that he's going to play against the Jets. They could add him to the 53-man roster and make him game day inactive. If anybody didn't see the clips of him running in practice, I can tell you with 100% certainty, it is a matter of when, not if, he plays for the Bills.
Yeah, for sure.
I will say,
or is there do people think there's an if?
That he's not think that some people got anxious of like, oh my gosh, I already thought that the bye week was waiting too long, and now he's still not being activated.
Sure.
Is there something they're not telling us? Was there a setback? So again, nervous Bills, nervous Mafia. That idea, I want to tell you, the clips we've seen, and if you listen to the press conference, you can hear the tone in which Sean McDermott talked about him later. It was like he was trying to say, listen, I'm not going to tell you people that he's going to play next week, and when I'm going to activate him, it doesn't benefit us. And we'd be lying to ourselves if we didn't think the fact that the Bills are 11.5-point favorites and are smashing everybody is giving them the confidence that, hey,
100%.
We want Trey White when we need him, and when we need him is not week 8 against the Packers.
No, I just read to you the wide receiving core that you're going up against: Romeo Doubs, Sammy Watkins, Amari Rodgers. Not that the Bills are not taking any teams lightly. I would never suggest that they are. I do think that you make some calculated decisions on the health of your players and when things are happening and when you roll things out. This is not a game where you need Trey White. Right now, you're playing with house money. Like you said, it's a 10.5-point favorite. This isn't the situation where you need to rush Trey out there. Get him back. Get him in. Sean said it was a good thing having him around, getting that timing of game day back around, just being in the building, getting all those things. I predicted he would be back for this game. I wouldn't worry that he's not. Like a 1 week wait isn't going to be the difference. Yeah, I saw him running too. He looks.
I was just saying, maybe if I didn't hear McDermott talk the way he did at the end of the press conference and see the video of Trey, maybe there would have been a little piece of nervous mafia in the back of my mind, going like, "Is there something I don't know about? Is there something
maybe?"
weird here?"
Yeah,
But I'm telling you, I'm guaranteed, like short of him getting hurt again in practice or something stupid,
sure,
he is going to play for the Bills. He looks good and explosive in practice.
Yeah, you better knock on that mahogany because I've said stuff on the podcast and then other stuff happened and people come in your mentions.
So it's a matter of when, not if. We have no idea. Any guy that gets injured can have a recurrence. Things can happen, but we are going to get Trey White back. He is going to be activated and he's going to play. And I'll even take it a step further. I will be shocked if it's not in the next 2 weeks after that. Yeah. Maybe it's not the Jets game, but it would either be, he's not going to play in this Packers game. I think that it's 50-50 or greater that we see him in the Jets game in the first week that he's activated, fully to the roster. He's there, but I'll be legitimately surprised if he's not back by the Vikings game in some capacity. Maybe they're limiting snaps. Maybe they're doing just red zone and high leverage snaps, but I will be very surprised if we don't see him on the field by the Vikings game. And I think it's 50-50 we could see him in the Jets game.
Yeah, I think I have no problems with any of that. Only thing I'm going to say, and it's just my nature, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on the return of Trey, is that it might not be all pro Trey that you're used to seeing right away. This might be something that takes until next year till you're really seeing Trey White, the player that you're used to seeing. It's still going to be better than no Trey White at all. I just want to encourage people to be patient. If it doesn't look the way it used to, or he gets beat on a play or two that he shouldn't.
Well, we just talked about Minnesota
getting back. Yeah,
that might mean Justin Jefferson. It doesn't mean he's going to lock down Justin.
Jefferson. Yeah, he doesn't. This isn't Madden. He doesn't come off of injured reserve and plop back up to his rating where it was. Right. This is we've seen it with Bills players in the past where it can take a full year of back in football action for you to really be back. We're hoping that he's back to a level that is a good level of getting a Trey White back. I think it'll still be better than the guys they have. But I just want to encourage people that he's not just going to come in and all of a sudden be the best defensive back in the league again. I don't think, maybe.
Well, and I will say the fact that they didn't rush him back. Sean McDermott talked about the fact he wanted to come back in training camp.
Yes.
He asked to come back in training camp. He wanted to come back week 1 and be ready to play. The fact that we're not going to see him until week 9 or week 10, I think is a step towards, hey, maybe we're going to see closer to whatever version of Trey we're going to see this season. Like, I don't know that this year we may not see peak Trey White. We may see the first year back version of Trey White. We don't get peak Trey White until next year when he's the second year back. But I think there's a chance that because they waited, maybe we do see the best version we're going to see of him early on because they did wait that long and that we did there. And then, Cliff talking here, all we really need is him to be all pro Trey White February 12th is what really matters.
It's a true story.
All right.
Well, maybe a little bit before February.
All right, fine. So maybe January. I'll take it. In January. So let's kind of wrap it up.
I know
here.
we're running a little long here. Sorry about that.
With Ben, and then wanted to still do our preview. So we still need to get to our predictions, and it's your turn to lead things off here. What is your score prediction for this game?
So again, this one to me, the things that really stood out here are, I think this plays right into the Bills' hands with how they want to play horizontally on offense, or how they have so far. They have not been able to stretch vertically, and if they can't get that vertical game going, either vertically running up the middle and getting the run game going, or passing vertically and stretching this Bills defense, I just don't see a way that they can score on pace with this Bills offense. I think they'll have to punt too many times in that scenario where they're really just going to give Josh Allen and the Bills too many opportunities to put this game away. I think you'll see a drive or two that feels very vintage Aaron Rodgers, where he just makes some incredible throw that only
because he still has that arm. He still does.
He still got it. And Aaron Jones will get some kind of crazy catch out of the backfield. They have enough power to go down and score some points on you, right? But I don't think they're going to have enough to be able to do it with the consistency that the Bills can. I do think the Bills might not be able to push the ball the way that they have all season in terms of just like bullying people with the passing game. But I think there might be some opportunities for balance to be created in this game and still be able to move the ball sort of at will, but not in the way that we've seen this year, more in a balanced approach with Devin Singletary again. You know, he really kind of came on last week outside of that short yard, not last week, the week before the bye. He came on pretty good and stuff that wasn't short yardage. So I expect to see some more of that at the run game coming out of the bye. And I have it 28-17. So I have them under the over under was 47.5. I have it under at 45. I wanted to put this one higher, Greg. I wanted like 34, 30 something, 17, but I do respect Aaron Rodgers and the Packers a little too much to go that crazy. And they just have too many names on this roster to make me think that the Bills can just totally boat race them. Or am I wrong? Are you going to go for a boat race?
Well, I mean, I think that we're both in the same range. I'm super, super close to what you have. So you have it an 11-point victory.
Yes.
I have it as a 14-point victory. I've got it 30-16. So super
Okay, we're
close,
close.
To what you have.
We're vibing. Me and you are vibing, Greg.
Yeah, we're right there. And the same way, I think that this is two good quarterbacks who are going to score a touchdown and then have a bunch of drives that end in field goal that feel like, anytime the Bills kick field goals, it kind of feels like a loss. But, Ben showed us that, hey, McDermott's making the right decisions, that when it's 4th and 9 because Rashawn Gary got a sack, it's okay to kick the field goal and take points. And, I think that now everybody's turned into the only smart decision is going for it every time. And that, you want to know what? Against Patrick Mahomes, maybe it is. But beyond that, taking points is okay. It is. Taking points is okay. So I do think we see 3 touchdowns with 3 field goals for the Bills. And I think we see a touchdown and 3 field goals for the Packers. I've got it 30-16. I've got the Bills covering, and I've got it going just under the over-under and sneaking in there. And in that, I won't be shocked. I did flirt with like a 34-16 or 38-16.
That's where I was, dude. Honestly, on like Monday, Tuesday, after watching that Commanders game, I was like, I'm going to be at like 42-16 for my prediction this week. And I had to really dial myself back, and it automatically sort of happened. But yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And ultimately, here's where it could happen. Bill has it that Case Keenum has 2 touchdown throws.
Well,
after we're blowing them out, and then Keenum comes in and pads the score. That's a possibility. Lauren's right there with us.
This isn't the Patriots they're playing this week. All right, guys, let's calm down.
But no, I do think that ultimately we're going to see continued success from a really good team. And I think, you talked about it in our bye week show that it's really hard to pick out the loss right now. If we went game by game, we would predict 16-1, and that it's okay to say that, hey, they're probably going to drop one in there that is going to be frustrating and annoying, but this team's going to win a lot of football games. And I think the next one is going to be on Sunday.
Yeah. I mean, coming out of the bye, it just gave me really some time to like reflect on where they are right now this season, where they're at. Kind of, I thought they could be 3-3 heading into the bye. Instead, you're 5-1, you're rolling into Green Bay. You're rolling in with having Green Bay come in, and you look at the schedule ahead, and I
got a feeling Buffalo is going to the Super Bowl. This is not the last time, but Buffalo is going to the Super Bowl.
Sorry, I had that in my head all bye week, so
awesome.
I had to share it with you guys. It's catchy. You know what? All these Bills rappers out there, I'm talking to you guys all right now. I've seen Bills rap showing up on Twitter, and none of you guys have remixed that and put that into a beat. I'm highly
missed opportunity.
And all you guys, come on, man,
missed opportunity. So ultimately, we appreciate you guys. The chat was awesome as normal. Ben was a great guest tonight. Somebody I've been looking forward to having on for a long time.
Awesome.
Really excited for him jumping on here. It was a lot of fun. Make sure you're checking out everything that we have going on. We're going to be now back into our rhythm. I got some great news for you, Aaron. Guess what happens after this Sunday?
Lots of 1:00
5
kickoffs.
Straight 1:00 kickoffs.
All month.
Fantastic.
You know what else
even
happens?
kind of pumped. Even the Thanksgiving matchup is 12:30. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
You know what else happens after this game?
More wins.
Christmas movie season. Boy, it's coming, baby.
Anyway. My wife was she's scheduled what day she's putting the tree up. She already picked out the date of when the tree's going up.
Fantastic news.
So appreciate you guys. Again, this was a ton of fun. Enjoy every bit of it. And Ben brought it up in his segment earlier that hey, when he was a Seahawks fan and looking forward and you had that expectation, I say it all the time when we talk about this. Don't miss the opportunity to enjoy every single minute. Enjoy every game, enjoy the previews, enjoy the post games, enjoy the content, enjoy, Twitter threads like Ben's that show how awesome the Bills are. And it's something that, you really want to be excited about, to be able to enjoy every moment.
It's the team's job to stay humble and hungry. It's not ours. Bask in this. Be totally over the top. In closing, I do want to real quick point out we've been doing Twitter Spaces, which has been a lot of fun, Greg. I know you've popped in there a couple times. I'm hoping to kind of drag you in on one of these ones we're doing every Friday morning. I got this time slot where I drop my kid off and I got nothing to do. And so from 9:30 to about 10:30 every Friday, we're popping in on Twitter Spaces. So if you're on Twitter and you follow me or anyone in Cover One, make sure you're hopping into that Twitter Spaces. A lot of fun. Just if you want to have a conversation with us. I know here on YouTube, you guys get to talk in the comment section, but here you can, raise your hand and actually have a conversation with us. It was really cool. We had a lot of great conversation last week. So we're going to continue to do that. Keep your eye out again, Fridays, 9:30 on Twitter. I'm also now doing the Casual Fridays. It used to be Joe Yurden. I'm doing that with Patrick Moran. So keep an eye out on that for Fridays. And just all the work. I just wanted to shout out, we went into the bye week, all the work that everybody at the Cover One podcast network is doing. Chris with the fantasy work, the air raid guys, the roundup guys, going deep, just all the content that we've put together here for you guys. I'm just proud of the team that we've got, and I just wanted to shout out all those guys while I was here. You're
there's
muted.
So much there's so much hard work going on and positive things going on. Make sure you take advantage of all of it. We've got a couple fun, exciting announcements coming up that you guys are going to be super excited to check out. So make sure you keep a close eye on everything that we have going there. Also, if you're listening to this, we're hiring for a graphics intern.
Yes.
So if you know somebody who creates graphics, you see this cool background around us
you
here.
can work with me.
People who create cool things, you can come work side by side with our creative director, Aaron Quinn, to be able to create new things, thumbnails, backgrounds, graphics for everything. We're looking to add some more talent to the team. So if you know somebody who does that and has some skill,
message us.
Out, we'll have some fun.
And also, if you've made it to this point in the podcast, we didn't even beg you guys once. Hit that like, smash it, smash the like. If you're still here on YouTube, smash the heck out of that like. Let us.
On
it's
your
free.
way out the
We
door.
need it. On your way out the door, give it to us and subscribe and all that stuff while you're here. Thanks, guys.
All right, we appreciate you guys. We've kept you long enough.
Yes.
On behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.